Konnichiwa. Watashi no channel yokoso. 40 years ago, on August 12, 1985, Japan Airlines Flight 123, a Boeing 747 SR-46 passenger flight from Tokyo to Osaka, Japan, suffered a severe structural failure and explosive decompression 12 minutes after takeoff, and after flying under minimum control for 32 minutes, the plane crashed in the area of Mount Takamagahara, 100 kilometers from Tokyo. The aircraft, featuring a high-density seating configuration, was carrying 524 people. The crash killed all 15 crew members and 505 of the 509 passengers on board, leaving only 4 survivors. An estimated 20 to 50 passengers survived the initial crash, but died from their injuries while awaiting rescue. The crash is the deadliest single aircraft accident in aviation history and remains the deadliest aviation incident in Japan. The 4 sole survivors, each of them female, were seated on the left side, roughly in the middle of rows 54 to 60 near the rear of the plane. They were Yumi Ochiai, an off-duty flight attendant, Hiroku Yoshizaki and her 8-year-old daughter Mikiko, and 12-year-old Keiko Kawakami, who lost her parents and sister in the crash. The United States National Transportation Safety Board and Japan's Aircraft Accident Investigation Commission concluded that a defective repair made by Boeing technicians after a tail strike 7 years prior was the reason for the structural failure. All hydraulic systems and flight controls were lost when the defective repair finally failed, causing a rapid decompression that tore off a significant section of the tail. The cockpit crew consisted of Captain Masami Takahama, 49. He was serving as a training instructor for First Officer Yutaka Sasaki on the flight, supervising him while handling the radio communications and also acting as the first officer. Takahama was a veteran pilot, having logged about 12,424 flight hours, including about 4,842 hours in the Boeing 747. First Officer Yutaka Sasaki, 39, was undergoing training for promotion to captain and flew Flight 123 as one of his final training evaluation flights, acting as captain. He had logged about 3,963 flight hours, including about 2,665 on the Boeing 747. And Flight Engineer Hiroshi Fukuda, 46, was a veteran flight engineer, having logged about 9,831 flight hours, including about 3,846 hours on the Boeing 747. The flight had a total of 509 passengers and 15 crew members. Among the passengers are Japanese singer Kyu Sakamoto, who was best known outside Japan for his international hit song Sukiyaki, which was sung in Japanese and sold over 13 million copies. The president of the Hanshin Tigers Professional Baseball Club, Hajime Nakano, and banker Akihisa Yukawa, the father of violinist and composer Diana Yukawa, who was born a month later. There were 502 Japanese, 1 Chinese, 2 West Germans, 4 British Hong Kong residents, 3 Indians, 2 Italians, 3 South Koreans, 1 from Britain, and 6 Americans. Among the 6 Americans on board on the flight was 26-year-old Ward Wallach, who had moved to Japan to live and teach English in the country. He had a bright future in Japan until it was cut short by this very crash on August 12, 1985. The aircraft involved in the crash had previously been in an accident on June 2, 1978, while flying as Japan Airlines Flight 115 on the same route. During an instrument landing at Itami Airport's runway 32L, the plane bounced hard on its first touchdown. The pilot then overcorrected by flaring too much, leading to a severe tail strike on the second landing. Of the 394 people aboard, 25 were injured, 23 suffered minor injuries, and 2 were seriously hurt. The tail strike caused a crack in the rear pressure bulkhead. Boeing technicians repaired the damage, and the aircraft was put back into service after logged 8,830 flight hours. In a separate event on August 19, 1982, the same aircraft involved in the crash struck the runway with its number 4 engine while landing at Chitose Air Base in low visibility. At the time, the first officer was flying the plane. The damage was repaired and the aircraft was returned to operation. This incident had no connection to the later crash of Flight 123. After the crash, public trust in Japan Airlines plummeted. Domestic passenger numbers fell by about a third. Rumors circulated that Boeing had taken responsibility to shield JAL for criticism over its maintenance inspections, aiming to protect a major client's image. Within a few months, domestic air travel had dropped by up to 25%. By 1986, JAL's international passenger numbers during the New Year period declined for the first time in 10 years. Some passengers began favoring All Nippon Airways, viewing it as a safer alternative. Following the crash, JAL President Yasumoto Takagi stepped down. 2 others involved in maintenance and inspectors committed suicide in the aftermath: Hiro Tominaga, a maintenance manager, and Suzumu Tajima, the engineer who had approved the aircraft after the 1978 tail strike. Tajima's suicide note mentioned work problems. Japan Airlines, Boeing, and the Japanese government jointly provided significant compensation to the victims' families. JAL paid 780 million yens in the condolence money to the relatives without admitting official responsibility. Those who are Japanese never forget it. And on August 12, 2000, the Russian nuclear submarine K-141 Kursk sunk in the Barents Sea during an accident, killing all 118 crew members. An Oscar II-class vessel, the Kursk, was participating in Russia's first large-scale naval exercise in over a decade when nearby ships detected 2 explosions. One minor, followed 2 minutes later by a much stronger blast. Despite this, the Russian Navy failed to recognize an emergency and did not begin searching for over 6 hours. The submarine's emergency buoy had previously been disabled, and it took more than 16 hours to locate the wreck, which lay 108 meters below the surface. Over the next 4 hours, multiple attempts to attach diving bells and submersibles to the escape hatch failed. The response drew heavy criticism for being slow and poorly managed. Officials misinformed the public, declined immediate foreign help, and President Vladimir Putin remained on vacation, only approving British and Norwegian assistance after 5 days. 2 days later, divers from those nations reached the escape trunk of the flooded 9th compartment, but found no survivors. The investigators concluded that a faulty weld on a practice 6576 kit torpedo allowed high-test peroxide to leak, triggering a catalytic explosion. The manufacturer disputed this, claiming such a failure was impossible. The blast blew open the torpedo tube doors, causing a fire, destroyed bulkheads, and incapacitated the forward crew. A second explosion, 5 to 7 warheads detonating, ripped a hole in the hull, collapsed multiple compartments, and killed everyone forward of the 6th compartment. The nuclear reactor shut down safely. 23 sailors reached the 9th compartment and survived for over 6 hours. Oxygen depletion forced them to replace a chemical oxygen cartridge, but when it fell into oily seawater, it exploded, starting a fire that consumed the remaining oxygen and killed the survivors. In May 2001, Dutch company Mammoet was contracted to salvage the vessel. Within 3 months, over 3,000 tons of custom equipment were prepared and transported. On October 3rd, 2001, 14 months after the disaster, the hull was raised and moved to dry dock, recovering all the bow and the remains of 115 sailors who were later buried in Russia. A 4-page summary of the official 133-volume report condemned stunning breaches of discipline, poor maintenance, outdated equipment, negligence, and mismanagement. It concluded the rescue was unnecessarily delayed and that the Russian Navy was wholly unprepared for such an emergency. Well, that's kind of all the events I have for today. Those who like the events, leave a comment down below and subscribe. This is Stephen Luke, and I will say my final words in Japanese. Arigatou gozaimashita. Sayonara. Yujin Tachi.